How y'all doing? Conscious Snoop, man. Today's video is entitled How Did We Fall? And what do I mean by that? How did our African empires fall? We always talk about the glory of Kemet, Ethiopia, the Nubian civilizations, Ghana, Mali, Songhai. We talk about all these, very impressive kingdoms and impressive empires, but we never talk about why did they fall and how did they fall. So today I'm going to attempt to bring some light to that. I think I should start with 3 points that I think led to the demise of our African empires. The first is an intellectual curiosity and invasion by Europeans and foreigners. 2 was Africans being naive to the temperament of Europeans. 3, I would say, is an economic thirst and an economic invasion by Europeans. Those 3 things to me are what caused our fall. So I'm going to start with the intellectual invasion, because that's the thing that I think started it all. That was the thing that kicked everything off. So the first time a European came to Africa to learn, if I'm not mistaken, was Herodotus. Herodotus is the father of history according to the Greeks. Herodotus came and he has a book called The Histories, where he talks about the different people he met in Egypt and the different people and different experiences that he encountered while there. When Alexander the Great came to Egypt in 323 BC, he wrote a letter to his mother saying that he is at the home of Greek culture. He was at the home of Greek civilization. A lot of scholars, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Pythagoras, all studied in Egypt and studied under these Kemetic masters. So you had them a fascination with the Egyptian mystery system. You had a fascination with the pyramid culture. You had a fascination with the pharaohs and the knowledge. They had a fascination for all these different things that led them to be, I would say, dangerously in love with black people. When it comes to being naive, Africans were naive into the sense of what Europeans were capable of, because again, I would say in Egypt and in other places in Africa, but Egypt is the catapult or the catalyzing figure in this discussion, that they live by a spiritual system known as Ma'at. A spiritual system which everybody, for the most part, understood. So when you saw a European, you didn't see him as a conqueror, a colonizer, an enslaver, a raper. You saw him as a man. You saw him as a person who understood the divinity of life, who had some type of common sense and couth about him. Okay? You have to understand the white psychology at that time. You have to understand that they were a different people because of what happened during the Ice Age. In the book Iceman Inheritance by Michael Bradley, it talks about this cannibalistic, barbaric nature that they adopted in the ice time, because there was not plentiful resources. There wasn't a lot of food around. So what they did was they became excellent hunters, and they became so, and I'll give you an example. It was so bad for them in terms of food that they ate the women, the older women, first, and ate the younger women, according to the age. That's who they ate. And that's where they created homosexuality, because they had to find some pleasure in each other, because they were eating the women and couldn't enjoy the pleasures of a woman. So they started screwing each other in the butt and started eating the women. This is the type of psychology that was, being, or the type of mentality that these Europeans had at the time. So when they came from out of the ice and they started to explore for themselves, I think that they understood that they had to take, because they had so little to take from their own home in Europe. The third thing was the economic invasion that happened. Economically, Europe is poor in terms of natural resources. They do not produce anything. Nothing is natural, to Europe. So they came over looking for the resources, the agriculture, the food. An example, when the Romans were fighting Carthage, and after they took over Carthage, after defeating Hannibal, after he killed himself, the European army was fed for hundreds of years just based upon the agriculture in Carthage. When Mansa Musa went through Africa on his pilgrimage to Mecca, he gave out $100 million in gold. So they saw all of these natural resources and all of this wealth, and they looked around at their home and they saw nothing. It was barren. It was desert. It was nothing there. So they had a thirst to feed themselves, to empower themselves, to be a formidable, I guess peer amongst other nations, amongst other kingdoms. Because you had Persia, you had China, you had India, their culture there. You had the African cultures who were all thriving, but Europe was starving. So this led to their ambitions, that I so eloquently put it like that. Their ambitions to want to conquer other people. One thing that I want to also stress is that you have to look at the tools in which they used to conquer. They used religion, and let me clarify what I mean by that, because black people, we are a spiritual people. So we're going to always take God out of everything that we do. But when I say they use religion as a tool. They subjugated people. They made you worship Jesus or die. So after a certain amount of people die, eventually we're going to get smart and say, you know what, I'm just going to bow down to this person. That's just one small example. So hopefully this video was somewhat informing. I'm going to divulge on this topic a little bit more in the coming year. But this is a good introduction to this series that I'm going to put out. I'm going to explain in depth about the naive actions of the Africans. I'm going to explain the intellectual invasion, and I'm going to explain the economic thirst by the Europeans. So Conscious Snoop, man.